Hello, I'm Hugo Rodriguez. In the previous episode, we saw how our human faculties, such as having a consciousness, intelligence, and emotions, must be but manifestations of essential qualities common to all that exists. I pointed out that principles of quantum mechanics can help understanding these common attributes and how they exhibit in non-human entities. Quantum principles are a way to build up a theory of consciousness, and I started by showing how they can explain what our collective consciousness is and what it does. In simple terms, our collective consciousness is a system of quantum energy made by the sum total of the energy waves emitted by all human inhabitants of the planet. As indicated by the Gedanken thought experiment, we're all connected at subconscious levels, and the decisions made by any one individual are bound to have at least some influence on the state of the rest of humanity. In this episode, I am addressing what is perhaps the most perplexing, controversial, and mysterious of all philosophical themes, the notion of consciousness. Early philosophers proposed ideas such as the pineal gland as being the seat of our consciousness, and some modern thinkers believe that consciousness could be found in the intricate world of neurons and how they connect to other neurons. But most researchers now are moving towards the idea that consciousness cannot be equated with the brain. In this episode, I will try to explain how quantum principles can offer convincing and logical explanation of what consciousness is and where it's located. The basis for understanding how quantum principles can explain consciousness can be found on the works of two renowned quantum pioneers, the French physicist and Nobel laureate Louis de Broglie, and the American theoretical physicist Fred Alan Wolf. Working on the particle wave paradigm, Louis de Broglie discovered that the physical world of molecules and the metaphysical world of waves are in reality one and the same. They are the same thing manifesting in two different states, like the two faces of the same coin. That means that the objects that we perceive in physical form also exist in a non-physical state invisible to our senses. So, what makes the non-physical become physical? The simplest explanation is the speed of light. Below the speed of light, things exist as molecules, which we can capture with our physical senses. Beyond the speed of light, they exist as energy waves, which are too fast for our senses to detect. Molecules exist both as tangible particles and as ethereal waves. At the speed of light, they behave as imperceptible waves and you are not able to sense them. But in slower states, they behave as molecules that you can perceive. The way you create your own reality has a lot to do with the speed of light, because it is when you leave this dimension, I will talk more about dimensions in oncoming episodes, to travel to the next dimension, that you transform waves into particles. That is, you transform potentiality into reality. And you can only make this journey beyond the speed of light. Fred Alan Wolfe wrote, "For light, birth and death are one." This property of zero-time particles makes photons exist on a borderline between solid tangible and ethereal potential. Let's dissect this notion a little bit. The reason that for light, birth and death are one is because things cease to exist in physical form at the speed of light. At this borderline zone, time stops, and particles take the property of waves, transforming tangible into ethereal. And here is a bit that can explain so much more. Beyond the speed of light, things exist as potential objects and events. Later on the series, I will be addressing the concept of quantum observation that explains how we transform these potential objects and events into tangible reality. Basically, we do this through an act of observation. When we decide to look into something, we slow down these ethereal waves, collapsing them into tangible molecules that we then perceive as physical. How do scientists come to these conclusions? This is one way. Here is Einstein's famous equation: energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. And here is a derivative of this equation. M represents the mass of a particle and v its velocity. As v approaches the speed of light, c, mass increases. When velocity reaches the same speed as light, the denominator in the equation becomes zero, causing mass to become infinite. At this point, time stops, and the physical world becomes impossible to detect. We are here indebted to the French physicist Louis de Broglie, who discovered that particles and energy waves are in reality one and the same, and that light exhibited in both states depending on how you look at it. De Broglie associated a wave with a body in movement and proposed that light was not the only substance that exhibits a wave-particle duality. Ordinary particles, even macro objects such as bowling balls, could also exhibit wave characteristics. Are you saying that a bowling ball is both an object made of matter but pure energy as well? Martin asked. Yes. Everything you see around you, people, plants, animals, buildings, objects, substances, all exist in physical, tangible states which you can perceive as matter, and intangible states or waves which you cannot perceive or sense. The material world is thus the physical format of energy manifesting below the speed of light. We can use these quantum principles to explain consciousness because they give us an understanding of how we become aware of our perceptions. The most important property of consciousness is awareness, to be conscious of things, and, as you can see, We can only become aware of what moves below the speed of light. Everything else exists in potentiality, in what scientists refer to as the quantum sea of probabilities. But what is consciousness made of? And where is it located? To answer these questions, we need to look at consciousness in its most elementary form, as quantum waves and as a property common to all that exists. All entities, whether living or inanimate, emit and absorb energy waves, and this is the way everything communicates with everything else. So at elementary levels, human consciousness cannot be different to how everything that exists interconnects. Let's see how the quantum prophet explained it. Your body generates your awareness by agglomerating the waves produced by all its internal parts, and from them forming an overall complex energy wave. This is your consciousness, and when you communicate with everything in your surroundings, you do it in exactly the same manner as objects in your surroundings communicate with you, by absorbing and emitting these overall energy waves. This is one of the most central concepts for explaining reality in quantum energy wave terms. Now, what is all this telling us? The prophet asked. That when any two systems communicate with each other, they both do it using the same basic mechanism, Robert proposed. Exactly, the prophet exclaimed. And what is this mechanism? He pressed them. The consciousness of the two systems, Robert replied cautiously. Hallelujah, you've seen the light, the prophet cheered. Can you see what consciousness is at elementary levels? Your body is a quantum system that vibrates with energy waves, your consciousness, and the objects you connect with are also quantum systems, vibrating with their own energy waves, their own consciousness. Both you and the objects you connect with have a consciousness in charge of managing your own components and all connections with the outside world. Are you saying that the pen I write with has a consciousness? An enlightened but still confused Natalie asked. Yes, your consciousness is aware of the internal mechanisms in your body, and because you have a brain that thinks, this awareness is mostly in the form of thoughts and feelings. Your pen doesn't have a biological brain, but as a whole, it acts as a quantum system overseeing all its internal structures, and the awareness it exhibits is of a different kind. We'll talk more about how inanimate objects feel, in inverted commas, later. However, accept for now that you and the pen communicate on equal terms by having energy waves that match and that make the two of you contact, link, and work as a team. It makes sense to believe that the body as a whole, rather than the brain in isolation, is what gives us consciousness. But this opened another Pandora box, because now we have to explain, how do we feel these energy waves? Are they the emotions that we experience? And more importantly, if the body is our consciousness, how does it make our decisions? Believe it or not, the principles of quantum mechanics can answer all these questions. But for this, we need to understand that consciousness is in reality a mechanism that separates entities from the outside world. Without this separation, there would be no communication or even existence. In the next video, I will explain how the energy waves that we discharge connect us with people and objects in the environment. I will describe how these quantum waves allow us to journey subconsciously into the quantum world of potentialities, from where we extract everything that makes our lives. You will see that we spend more of our existence in this hidden world of probabilities, shopping for potential events to bring into our physical reality. The concepts that I covered in these initial 2 episodes are essential to understanding more advanced concepts. So before closing this presentation, I will now summarize them briefly. I commenced the series by pointing out that our human faculties, including intelligence, rationality, and emotional feelings, are but human manifestations of underlying attributes common to all that exists. I then explained how entanglement and the Gedanken thought experiment gave us the grounds to demonstrate that all people are connected at subconscious levels, and that this is our collective consciousness. The decisions made by any one individual can influence the state of mind of the rest. I said that our collective consciousness governs our intentions and our feelings, prompting us to favor some choices while neglecting other choices. I also said that quantum mechanics is the science of waves, and that quantum systems, which are essentially everything that we observe, including our own body, emit energy waves. In this video, I addressed the notion of consciousness, and I pointed out that most scientists are now moving towards the idea that consciousness cannot be equated with the brain. I said that quantum principles can offer convincing logical explanations of what consciousness is and where it is located. I indicated that the quantum basis for understanding consciousness can be found on the works of Louis de Broglie and Fred Alan Wolf. Their works made us aware that physical entities, including a human being, manifest in 2 forms: as particles, which give us our physical appearance, and as metaphysical waves that we cannot perceive. At the speed of light, the physical becomes the world of potentialities, which we can access only subconsciously. By slowing down potential events from this sea of probabilities, we transform them into the physical events of our lives. In oncoming episodes, I will be recapturing these points to explain how our thoughts and intentions, which are acts of quantum observations, collapse the wave function. That is, how they change invisible potentiality into tangible reality.